Josie. And when we come together, there are ways in which we can build them and build some enormous mosaic. And it's been happening on Facebook, which of course has been great. I'm Holly Lau, and I'm now chair of theater and dance. And some of you who were here from 1991 or between 1991 or after 1991 probably knew me as a dance professor, but now I'm in theater and doing the chairmanship. So that's my new role, and it's been exciting, I have to say. So when we got all those memories, those posts about memories of Josie on the Facebook, I have to say I was a little upset. And I was upset because I kept thinking, oh my God, that's my Josie. And then I realized that she had this gift to walk into people's hearts and make us feel known. And then I had to let it go and let us all have her as our Josie. One of the most spectacular things I thought Josie did, and I witnessed this at the last 10 years that she was here, is the way in which she would be with people at the end of their lives. That she had no fear, and that she would be with somebody who needed her when they needed her, and walk with them to the end of their lives. And to see the way in which those angels surrounded her these last few years was, of course, she paid it forward, and it was owed to her, and it was so beautiful. She was a role model for us, or for me, certainly in that way. When I came in 1991 to interview, I was coming from New York, and I tell you, the South was a foreign country. What was I doing? In fact, they asked me in the interview, why are you applying to school in the South? And I said, because you have a job. But the person who picked me up at the airport was Josie. The person who took me out to lunch was Josie. And because she was so truthful and so authentic and so funny, I thought, this could be my friend. And you know, she was my really, really good friend. When she retired, which we think was in 2002, we can't quite exactly remember. It was hard on us. I wasn't ready for that then either. But I have to tell you, the building wasn't ready for that. Because on the day she walked out, her last day of being a full professor, to tell you the truth, the building burst into flames. This is actual. I mean, it was Doug Kirchy's office. Right next to Josie's. And some said it was electrical. But my feeling was the building was really upset with the rest of us. I got to be with Josie in September. She was in the hospital, and I spent some hours with her while, we waited for tests to be done, et cetera, et cetera. And for a couple of hours each day that I was there, we laughed and we joked, and I didn't always know what we were talking about, and it didn't matter one iota. Although she kept saying over and over to me, Holly, you gotta fix Act 2. And I'm not even a director. So I have to say I've been pondering that for a while. But she found out in that visit how sick she was. And when she found that out, she took a beat, and then she said, well, we better get this party started. And so let's do that. I have a couple things. If all of you have not had a chance to go into the studio theater and see the Josie memorabilia and select something for yourself, please take a moment to do that. And now I'd like to introduce Dean Ranta, Dean of our college, and I'm sure all of you know Dean Ranta. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born here. And it seems like Josie never really did retire. I mean, she was always here, even when she wasn't here. In fact, I'm pretty sure I came before she did, but I wouldn't swear to it, because I've been racing here before I even arrived. So it was one of those things. But it was great having her as a colleague and professor in the college. And I was thinking back on times together, and the magical way in which she did things. This was not an authoritarian person, although she could be, but in magical sorts of ways. And it kind of reminded me last night of her, because I was with my wife at a party at the Ridgeway, a Melco Theater in East Memphis. And it was the 100th anniversary of the Melco Theaters. And I think actually a couple of you in the audience were there. And there were various films around to choose to see after the drinking and eating and things like that in the lobby, preceded by a film tribute to the Melco and the Lightman family and Tashies and that. And my wife and I chose, for no particular reason, The Wizard of Oz to go and sit in and see the pre-film and the film. We weren't necessarily planning on staying, but we did. And it was one of those sort of magical things. And in the midst of that, I sort of mixed up Josie and the Wizard. Or maybe it was, the good fairy or witch. I hate using the term witch with Josie, but she was such an amazing person in the way that she would, use humor, laughter, that from up high, look at you to get things done, or just wandering into my office and going, "Is this Dean this in?" It's rather disarming. And usually whatever she wanted, she got. And that's the way it worked. But I think one of the memories that I will always carry away is something that I was able to do with her. I've been doing television shows of various kinds for many years. But one of them for over 3 decades, the Grammys. I've been working in that show in one capacity or the other for all that time. One of the years when Josie was on a supposed sabbatical out working on something out on the West Coast, I had the great privilege and honor to have her as my guest at the Grammys. And there's no question, when she floated into that red balloon and the spectacular dress she had, which kind of witch she was. She was the Wizard of Oz and just a beauty.
I got my boots on because that's my first memory of Josie, but she made lots of actors, or helped cultivate lots of actors, but she also helped cultivate lots of drama teachers. And with that, lots of warm-ups started here that go on to our students that someday will come back to us tenfold. So stand as you are able. We're going to do a little warm-up. I'm Jenny Madden, Odell Madden. I graduated in 1992. Pop, 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 pop.
I'm Tiffany Helming, a BFA graduate in 1995, I think. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to you someone who is very special, and we are so thrilled that he is with us today representing Josie's family. Jeffrey Palahniuk has now become my friend, and I am happy to introduce you to him as he stands before you to represent his mother, Josie's big sister, Oreen, as well as his wife, Grace, and their 2 children, Gavin and Ginger. Please welcome Jeff from California.
Well, I'm very glad to be here. So, my name's Jeffrey Helming Palahniuk, and I was Josie's favorite nephew. I'm the only child of her sister, Oreen Helming Palahniuk, so I didn't really have a lot of competition. So, I I am going to get through this. My parents were divorced when I was in 1975, and we moved from Long Island in 1980 down to Memphis. And before this, I had met Josie on a few occasions when she would come and visit and bring lots of real presents. So she already had a good reputation with me. When we arrived in Memphis for a short time, we stayed with Josie and her cat Sibel in her apartment on McLean and Poplar. And Josie and Sheila Bam taught me to play backgammon, and the Judys, Powell and Moore, taught me to make stained glass. And this was my first introduction to Josie's world. And in the summer of 1980, I became an honorary red balloon player. The warm-ups were very familiar, although I haven't done them in 30 years. I went to rehearsals and worked on set painting and traveled to the Memphis Parks circuit to watch the players do their thing. It seems like I spent half my life shuttling between Memphis State and the theater department here and Playhouse on the Square before it became University of Memphis. So by the time I was 12, I had already seen more theater than many people see in their whole lives. And thankfully, I did not get the disease, despite the exposure. I did, however, go to art school, and Josie had a hand in that actually as well. So I was ever the procrastinator, and Josie dragged me into the faculty room and sat with me, and she graded her papers while I filled out the applications for college. And she wouldn't do it for me, of course, but she was there for moral support and to make sure I did not abandon my task. In every way, Josie was another mother for me growing up. I grew up in a single-parent household, and Josie became the other parent who listened to me and steered me in the right direction without bias or pandering. And I think her experience as a college professor teaching theater students, made her uniquely qualified to help me through adolescence. She was also a great source of moral support to my mother, who was doing double duty as a single parent. Josie was generous in everything. Christmas and birthdays were always fun, and she loved to have a good time and give lots of presents. From early childhood all the way through adulthood, she always gave me children's picture books. And I think this was partly because of the illustrations, but also because Josie wanted to remind me not to take myself so seriously. She's the one who taught me all about Shel Silverstein. To know Josie was to know that she was not afraid of children. And if you were a child, you would be spoken to with the same regard as any adult in the room, and perhaps even with some preference. I'm very grateful that my children had a chance to learn this about her as well. A healthy share of my parenting comes from that experience, and I'm often reminded of her when I sing with my daughter or play the wag with my son. Josie's mother was a college-educated, rare at that time, as well as her aunt, who was a health commissioner for the state of New York. So she came from a legacy of women and men who thought for themselves, and it showed in her life. Josie loved to fool around, but she didn't suffer fools. One of the many and favorite growing up stories that was shared around the dinner table was the story of the pink plate. There was a set of multicolored plates, one of which was pink. Both of the girls coveted this plate and fought almost every night over whose turn it would be to have the pink plate for dinner. Their parents had spoken to them numerous times, trying to work out a way for them to share, but it was to no avail. Until one night when their father had had quite enough, and while they were still bickering without a word, he picked up the pink plate from the table and made a short journey to the concrete balcony and proceeded to drop the plate for its final setting. At which point, the fighting stopped, and the two girls stared in quiet amazement, and their father came to sit down at the table for dinner, and not another word was said about the pink plate. I think that says something about Josie. A couple of years ago, I learned that Josie's memory was beginning to deteriorate, and I made a long overdue journey back to Memphis to help her sort some things out. I felt somewhat helpless being in California. I knew that I couldn't do much for her, but I knew that she had another family that was taking care of her, and that was you. Just like me, Josie had served you and cared for you and loved you, and you responded when the time came to love her back. As many of you know, Josie died with the same grace and attitude as she lived. She was always cheerful when she wasn't completely exhausted, and she was always thoughtful of those around her. She comforted us in her passing as much as we comforted her. She thought of everything. Josie was a big person, and she filled a big part of our lives, and though she's gone, she did not leave it empty. She left us with many gifts that we will carry with us for the rest of our lives. And that's everything that I had to say. But I asked my mother, who couldn't be here, to also write, because I know that all of you would want to know a little bit more about Josie and how she grew up. So this is from my mother, Oreen Helming, and she's a better writer than I am. Okay, so imagine this is her speaking. Josie and I were born in Minneapolis to a family of Midwesterners. When Josie was 4 and I was 7, the family moved east to Mamaroneck, a suburb of New York City. Our father was an editor at Houghton Mifflin Publishing and commuted to the city. Our mother was a housewife, artistic and civic-minded. They were good-natured, caring young parents. Joe and I shared a bedroom growing up where we spent happy hours listening to radio programs like The Lone Ranger and Inner Sanctum, and shared other activities like jumping on our beds, the wooden frames of which our father had to repair more than once. And of course, arguing about where the line was between her side of the room and my side of the room. We also liked to sing, especially after lights out. The songs were ones we learned at school and at Girl Scout camp. Our parents often despaired of quieting us, and I can still see one or other of them at our bedroom door demanding or imploring us to be quiet and go to sleep. After all, there's only so much Stephen Foster and rounds of White Coral Bells a person can stand. I'll tell you something else about that bedroom door. It was located near the front door of the apartment, and when we were a few years older, one night as my date and I were leaving, after he had come in and said hello to my parents, I noticed the bedroom door was ajar and automatically went to pull it closed, but it was stuck. Not so stuck, however, that it didn't wobble a little, because my little sister was holding it open so she could peek. It's hard to think of Josie as a little sister. Since we were 3 years apart, we didn't run in the same circles while we were growing up, and our interests were different. Josie liked to read movie magazines, and so I could never understand why her intellectually minded parents kept buying her movie magazines, of all things. Obviously, they knew something I did not. She and I both went to the University of Florida, and she was into theater from the beginning. During most of our young and middle adult years, we lived different lives in different places, visiting back and forth from time to time. She stayed with me while in New York City. I remember Taylor Brooks and Tim Myers and Ken Friedman were there then, among others some of you would know, I'm sure. Fast forward from the 1960s to the 1980s. Jeff and I moved to Memphis when he was in the 4th grade, and the three of us became more of a family unit. She became his go-to Aunt Josie. Her house was his home away from home. When things would come to a head between Jeff and me and all else failed, I might say, "Call your Aunt Josie." And I could overhear him on the phone with her. And then she said, and "It's not fair," and so forth. Actually, I made a point of not listening. They made quite a team sometimes. They didn't gang up on me exactly, but they did see eye to eye on some things. For example, from time to time, an episode like the following would occur. Because despite my appreciation of social amenities, I would occasionally lapse. So we would all be walking in a crowd, such as at the mall, or a theater, intermission, or an airport, and I would be turning to watch a person or persons, oblivious and unconscious of staring, unquestionably bad manners. I might have noticed a parent giving a little kid a swat that seemed unjust, or a young woman wearing just about nothing, or wearing something spectacularly wonderful. Suddenly from behind I would hear quiet, urgent voices simultaneously saying, "Mom," and "Oreen," and Josie, sort of smiling, would say, "You were staring." As you know, Josie was probably the most generous spirit most of us will ever know. She was always supportive of my efforts, and she was of the efforts of many of you. A while back, I came upon this note from her that she wrote me almost 20 years ago. I don't remember the situation, but here's what she wrote. "This is me telling you that your perseverance is commendable and will pay off. Please rise above or sink below and let it go over your head any temporary obstacles. If $1,000 would help you going forward, then you've got it in cash right now. Please know that you're a great asset, a no-risk investment, and I'd like to make it. Cheers and love, Josie." And as many of you also know, she loved to give presents, and to receive them too, of course. In our little family, Christmas and birthdays were the ultimate times. For her, the more the merrier. Spoiled rotten by her we were. As the years went by, I tried to be firm about what she and I gave each other, emphasizing that we needed to be paring down, not continuing to accumulate. Gifts were fine, I preached, but they should be consumable, practical, or with a limited lifetime. No more trinkets, large or small. It was a concept she approved of, but found difficult to follow to the letter. She became inventive. Pears from Harry and David, pedophores from somebody else, gift packages of spices and herbs from Penzies, top-of-the-line garden and kitchening gloves, Califon pans, padded socks worthy of a marathon runner, down comforter, and many more, and then maybe a pair of earrings with a not very apologetic comment. "I know you don't want any more things, but when I saw these, I couldn't resist. And there's something to wear after all. That's practical." Josie liked tradition. Thanksgiving and Christmas meant turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and rutabaga and stuffing. Her nephew loved her stuffing. When she was on sabbatical in California, she FedExed a package of her stuffing to Jeff for Thanksgiving. After Jeff was busy with his own life, Josie and I established a new Sunday evening routine. First supper, then Murder, She Wrote, and then Scrabble. Joe was good friends with John and Jerry Dye's mother, Lynn, who was a competitive game player. She and Josie would play Scrabble and Lynn's version of Gin Rummy when Josie visited the Dyes, and then Josie, who professed to play just for the fun of it, but primed, would come and beat the pants off of me at the game. She always managed to collect a lot of face cards. She whistled under her breath when she played gin, especially just before she reached out and swept up a bunch of cards to make a killing. Scrabble was my game, so I got some good wins there. Sometimes during our games, a phrase would trigger us, and we would break into song, just as we had when we were girls. That was ongoing throughout my life. We used to kid that we knew the first lines or verses of lots of songs. She knew many more than I did, and also she could harmonize. At Christmas, of course, we were good for the first verses of most carols and excellent at humming along. Josie was a happy, giving spirit. When she wasn't buying a little treasure to give somebody, she was choosing a beautiful greeting card to send. My drawers and books and inside cupboard doors all hold lovely cards I couldn't bear to throw away. And they're all signed, Cheers and Love, Josie. And that's what she left us, cheers and love.
Well, I have to say that this has been so much fun. As I kept on saying to people, they would say, "How are you?" I said, "I'm fine, I wanted to start." I'm over the preparation parts of it. But it has been such a treat to see all the folks that came here and how they just are doing so great, doing all kinds of stuff.
I just remember the first day that I met you and I walked into the office, and I had been here before, but you were on sabbatical, so I didn't know who you were until that time, and I came in, you were in your fuzzy brown jacket, and you proceeded to save my life for like an entire day to get me into school and to find a way to pay for it and all of that stuff. And now I am a fuller, better person for it.
You saved my life too, because if you hadn't done that for her, then she wouldn't be here right now, and she would have gone back to Massachusetts. So, thank you.
Are we rolling?
Yes, we are.
Oh, we are? Oh,
my gosh. Okay. Well, I came to this faculty in the fall of 1965. In walked this very tall lady who was doing a more convincing cowboy than any
My
other
life's
people.
story.
And I was talking to her because I figured out quickly that she had done a lot of theater. And so I asked her, what was I going to do? There was no male narrator. And she put in my head that she could do this.
No, what I said, actually it wasn't me. I just said, well, why does it have to be a male? And you went, oh.
So this was a grad student this first year. And so what I also remember are her silly shenanigans all of the time. Every night was having pea shooters. And she sat with, like, hitting the bells in the hall to make them ring. And there were chair chases.
Yes, well, we had chair races and sit in her chair and we would race her. But you're going to college? You can come up here.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because Josie was in grad school here. That was I started teaching her at 22. And then Josie left for 10 years, I believe.
9.5.
Yeah. So we worked out, that I wanted her to come to look at the job. I think we made the final decision by doing a tarot card reading.
That's the, yes, you've heard the story, I suspect, of Doug's version of that story.
John Mack and I are the two people in the party that voted against Josie when she was a big shoe-in. We were being stymied, and so we got a little fortress out there, and we voted against her, and it's proven that we were right all along.
Before I actually met you, I hated you. I was jealous of you because I thought you were Keith's first love. And that when you came back to me this stage, you would take him away from me. And you could have if you'd wanted, but thank God you let me go.
Josie, it's today, probably, it may be tomorrow, marks our 44th anniversary of meeting at P.K. Young High School Auditorium, 1957, Gainesville, Florida. You were a slim, good-looking young blonde, headed to academe, going to major in history, I think. I met you at a Florida Players meeting, as you may recall, and you signed up to help out in the shop, and that's the end of that. We've been together ever since. It's a remarkable moment in the history of our theater, anyway.
But you've been for 25 years since you came back, right?
Starting in 26.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
But of course, was here off and on in the summers during regular players.
Have you forgotten to talk about it?
Oh, I guess not. The Dead Veterans, the Lead Balloons. We did it in 1969. It was the first year after the garbage strike. And we had an integrated company, went into the parks. When the park system was still really swell, it was interesting. And they were threatening another garbage strike, as I recall, when we were out at the Jewish Community Center. And I called Ron and said, we're going to go into the parks. And he said, what are you doing? And I told him. And he said, I don't think there'll be a problem. And every once in a while, I'd look up and there'd be somebody on a bike. And just hanging around. And there was never a problem. Flatbed truck. We were actually, it was on the floats for the Cotton Carnival. We built sets at the Cotton Carnival barn. That's where I learned all the important songs in my repertoire.
When we were all in bed, Mrs. O'Leary on the lantern in the shed, and when the cow kicked it over, she winked her eye and said, there'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Fire, fire, fire!
I wish I was a fascinating bitch. I'd never be poor, I'd always be rich. I'd live in a house with a little red light. I'd sleep all day, I'd work all night. And once a week, I'd take a little rest and drive all our customers wild. Oh, I wish I was a fascinating bitch instead of an illegitimate child.
My sunshine, my sunshine, you make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Well, I do think this is the end of theater and dance. With Josie still being here teaching her most famous course, though.
We hope. We hope that works out.
That was nice.
That dead Russian guy.
It's great.
The one that everybody hates to take until they finish it and then they're going, well.
Well, thank you for all of your checkout puzzles. I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot. To this day, I can actually remember some of the stuff that you said.
So she had me run around Big Red about 50 times until I was out of breath. And then she made us lay down and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh until we just found ourselves crying our little eyes out. And it's a little skill that she taught me, and I use it all the time now in my sales career. And it closes deals. Thank you, Josie.
A Josie memory. Well, I was always told by our very good friend Sam Jordan that I would always be Josie when I grew up. And I always went, no, I'm not going to be like Josie. I'm not. And guess what? I'm just like you. And that is a
wonderful compliment.
Josie, I had my teeth cleaned just for this occasion. And I wanted to thank you for your acting class and the aid that you gave me. I appreciate that. You brought me out from behind stage out into the forefront. I appreciate that.
I always felt like no matter what I was going through, I could knock on your door, and if you were in your office, I could have a talk with you about this, that, and the other at strife in my life.
I came to talk to Josie, and she said, I will only approve your re-entry and your class schedule if you promise only to make C's the entire time you're here. I was the kind of person who had to have perfection or I just gave up entirely. And she wasn't going to go for that. She was very, very right about that.
Thanks a lot for your laugh. It's a great laugh. Happy retirement, Josie. Love it.
No, because I remember as a freshman, like I said, Josie was trying to get me into classes, but she only got me into Steve Malin's intro class, and then she put me in theater crafts class, and she put me in a lab. And then Stephen Huff, who was taking directing experiments, asked me to be in scene. And I said, oh, but that's during my English class. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just give it just one time, and I'll go be in your singing. And I never went back to English.
She just used to yell at me.
I like that
What for?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. What for?
I didn't do my journal entries.
This journal thing, I don't know where you came up with that line, but it was like, I just couldn't do it. I thought you were like practicing psychology or trying to get inside my head, which at the time I was very protective of it. And as you said, well, Michael J. will never get above a C if you don't get out that journal. As we well know, I never did.
Yeah, it's been really fun, Josie, and I wouldn't miss it for the world, all 12 years of it. August undergrad, never.
Yes,
That's right.
Josie would sign this.
Do have the record. Okay, I'll tell one story from over here because you're on camera and you're asking about my favorite memory of the two of you together.
Oh dear.
Was the cast party for when we did Lone Star and Laundry and Bourbon and the other one, and we had, Cliff and I at our apartment, we had a 5-alarm chili party.
Oh God.
That everybody showed up at. You ladies showed up at. And my favorite image is Gloria was reclined in our recliner laying all the way back. And I remember she looked up to me and she said, Roger, do you have any more whale music? And it was dawn, it was past dawn, and I was telling Josie, I said, Josie, we'll make sure, we're going to throw a blanket over her. We'll make sure she gets out. Josie wouldn't leave until Gloria had left. And I remember walking out, and it was like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning the next day.
I got this call from Josie, and she said, we have this opening at the university. Could you come in just for 1 year? Fill in until we find somebody. And it was an opening in movement theater, and I came here for just 1 year. And here I am, 20 years later. So thank you, Josie. You helped me find my place in the world.
Thanks for your humor, 3 funny guys right here, your love of vaudevillian things, and your sensitivity and your care. And have a happy retirement.
Josie, I have my props together because I'm a good stage manager and no one else will ever understand this, but I just want you to know I have the cranes and I will never forget crane life and how many cranes you folded during that rehearsal process. I love you. You're one of the most important people in my life and you're awesome. Congratulations on your retirement.
And Josie, for you, I just want to tell you that you were wonderful at pushing me and everyone else in your classes and around you to be the best that they could be. And I was very happy to have gotten to know you and have been influenced by you.
Hi, Josie. I never took a class with you. I feel like I've had a lifetime of classes from all the good advice you've given me.
Hi, Josie. Thanks for taking care of all my bumps and scrapes and making sure I didn't fall out of the catwalks and holding my hand and filling my head full of all those wonderful sayings.
Thank you very much. I think you've been an inspiration to so many students over the years, and we'll miss you. Have a very happy retirement.
I have remembered so much that you said to me, so much that you taught me. I still quote you to this day in every aspect of my life.
But no, it is interesting to think about. As you can see, it makes me teary to even think of Josie not being here. It's hard for me to get it. She thinks she'll be here doing great classes, but she doesn't get to do the hard work. So it's hard for me to imagine functioning. I think we've so grown together. Wow.
Glory Jean, I'm not going to be far away. You'll be okay. You'll be okay.
That I think part of our department is about that we have become like almost perfect complements of one another. I mean, I think we each balance each other in a really incredible kind of way.
We'll just do it differently.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting seeing what the department, but I think it's created such a spirit for what the department is. That it probably has a history that goes on. But it's a rare thing in modern America to have a working relationship this long. Do you know what I mean? Where people really do kind of create a world together. We created it the way we wanted it to. It's great. So I'm glad that I do think the reunion is what galvanized you to think about going on in retirement.
Well, I guess maybe it did. I didn't think of it in that way. It could be. And also because I think it is time. I mean, I think it's probably time for some stuff to shift and change. And there are a lot of things that should perhaps happen, many of which I don't need to be a part of. And that's good. I mean, that's not bad. It's just good, different stuff.
Change is good.
It is absolutely good, and I'm for it myself.
Just take a look at this past weekend and how many people have lives affected.
I just love that. I have to say, it's just been so much fun to watch people.
You know that we were sisters in another world. You know it and I know it. What other two people are this big and wear a size 10 and a half shoes? But I can never thank you enough for taking care of my boys. There's not many professors that take a sabbatical based on when Jerry Dye's going to start as a freshman.
You have been a huge part of my life from the time I was 13. And I was sitting on some bone books and eating cheesecake with you. And you've been my Aunt Josie, and you've been my teacher, and now you're my friend, and I love you very much.
We first met you in 1982. We came to University of Memphis State at the time, and it was very unusual situation where our son was transferring here, and we were trying to find a place for him. And we found more than a place for him. We found a person that was just incredible.
Josie.
Josie.
We love her. She taught us stuff. Just stuff.
How to act.
Indeed. Badly.
And well.
At the same time.
We all got better later, and it all has to do with you.
That's true.
That early formative training when we weren't ready for it, but it sunk in.
Somehow. Absolutely.
Over the years.
As thick-headed as we were at 18 and 19 and 20 and 21.
Thank you.
We love you, Joseph.
Thank you.
A lot.
I thank you for everything you've done, but most of all, Josie, I just thank you for being my friend. We love you dearly. You'll always be Annie Mae. God bless, and go forward with your shoulders down.
I'm taking this off. I left it on because I was afraid I'd try to lift stuff, and because I was afraid that people would give me too big a hug and it would hurt my arm.
I think the great pleasure for me this weekend is how many people are in theater. I mean, it really makes you think it isn't like, I think you're thinking it's like really a vapor up there, you know, it doesn't make you tell me it doesn't really exist. But it's been a pleasure how many people are actually in theater. I mean,
We're doing stuff
are
very
a lot
long.
of things theatrical, so it's exciting.
I don't care. I just want people to be doing stuff. row and change and carrying on. All right, my darling. Bye. Bye.
Hey, Karen, where's Karen? Okay, everybody. It's coming. Come on.
Equally important figures in the theater, Josie, Helming, or Anton Chekhov. You are to, at any point, we're not going to give an order to things, so just stand, and if somebody else stood before you, then wait till they're finished, it doesn't matter. So you're going to stand, and you're going to say, for instance, drop your shoulders, and we're all going to answer, Josie. Or you'll say something about Russia. First?
No, but do say the Chekhov quote, say.
Oh, yeah. Well, they all say who said it or who didn't say it, so don't you say it so that we can guess. And after we're finished, we will, well, I don't know what we'll do when we're finished, but we're going to play by ear, and it's going to be great. Okay, so, and it's... Josie! Who else?
What Mother Teresa does is important. This is acting.
When a woman is playing, people say, what beautiful eyes you have, beautiful hair.
Chekhov. I'm a seagull. No, that's not it. Don't let them sit down. They'll never get them back up. Josie. Time wounds all heal.
Not to decide is to decide.
Josie.
You cannot play an emotion. I won't let you.
Josie. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Josie. And 1,000 years from now, man, we'll still be saying, life is so hard, and we'll still, like now, be afraid of death and not want to die.
Oh, how the music is played. They are leaving us. What
true love. It was artificial, but it seemed real enough at the time.
Check off.
When you go down in flames, it's interesting.
Put the emphasis on the appropriate syllable.
I got this tough one. What? Josie!
Next,
What?
Okay. I wasn't sure about the inflection.
next to being a man, it's better to be an ox, it's better to be a common horse. If only you do the work.
Check off.
There's plenty to do if you want to do it.
Choose matter.
Ask real questions.
Josie.
Indeed.
This is not brain surgery.
Okay. This is a real question. You can say no.
Come what may, I'll get drunk today.
And what does it mean, dying? Perhaps man has 100 senses, and only the 5 we know are lost in death, while the other 95 remain alive. It is always youth, when there is nothing else to be said.
Man is endowed with the reason and creativity to increase what's been given him. So far, all he's done is destroy it.
Women can't forgive failure.
Time will pass, and we shall be gone forever. They will forget us, but our sufferings will turn into joy for those who will be living after us.
If ever you should need my life, come and take it.
Check off. Only God knows what our calling is.
Check off.
Your play is so hard to act. There are no live people in it.
Subtlety and nuance.
Don't kick the dog until you get home.
What we need are new forms. And if we can't have them, we're better off with nothing.
Check off.
Breathe.
Josie. Sparkle.
Josie.
Drop your shoulders.
Josie.
Just talk.
Josie.
The floor is not your friend.
Have you ever been to a rehearsal? No, that's why we call them rehearsals.
Get your hair out of here.
Ironic.
People don't do things to you. You let people do things to you.
Josie.
Say your words loud and
Don't fall off the stage.
and cease.
Hi, I'm Steve Swift, and I graduated with a BFA in performance in 1994. I must say that video was incredible, so thanks to and seeing Gloria and Josie together was just kind of really wonderful for me. But it made me think of something. I wasn't going to say this, because Gloria may absolutely kill me, but I'm going to say this. So, not this past summer, but the summer before, as everyone was working to kind of move Josie out of her condo, there were some things, and Gloria said, is there anything, you might want to take to the office for Voices of the South and some things like that? And she was having people combine, is there some little thing you want? And so I happened upon this object, and it caught my eye, and it was it looked like a deer antler kind of thing. And I was like, what is that? And without hesitation, Gloria said, oh, that's Josie's roach clip. Roach clip? Are you kidding me? I didn't. Gloria said, but I was never one to smoke pot, but there was one year in the 1970s, I think, when Josie was really into pot for a little while. I just remember thinking, Josie, what are you doing? That's her roach clip. It is like my most prized possession. It is on a shelf in my living room, and it also hangs on my Christmas tree. Anyway, apologies, Gloria. I didn't mean to say that, but seeing the two of you together made me think of that, and I thought it was very funny. So like I said, I'm Steve Swift. I graduated in 1994. I moved here to attend Memphis State University in the fall of 1987. And for those of you theater majors who can do math, that is 7.5 years. I was an undecided major, but I told my advisor over in Skates Hall that I wanted to take Intro to Theater. That was the one thing I knew I wanted to take. And that first theater class introduced me to Doug Kirchie and a parade of jackets with rolled up sleeves. And he never wore the same one twice. It also brought me into this room where I saw Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And over the next few years, I decided to major in international business, and then German, and then accounting, and then architecture, and then pre-dentistry, and all the while through those years I came here to this building to see plays and quietly witnessing what took place on these stages. I also knew that there was one thing that was definitely going to stand in my way of graduating, and that was a class called public speaking. I knew I could never, ever stand in front of a group of people and speak. And so finally, my advisor told me that there was actually a class that I could take in lieu of public speaking, and it was called Basic Oral Interpretation. I would only have to read poems, and it was a theater class. That class introduced me to Gloria Baxter, and before I knew what had happened, I was a theater major. And I was in acting classes with a really tall woman who fed me oranges and apples, and carried a long macrame keychain, and she said, fuck a lot. In class, in front of students. As a new theater major, I was introduced to the great canon of theatrical literature, Shakespeare, Chekhov, and of course, Greater Tuna. I loved it. I thought it was absolute and complete genius. Josie was not such a fan. I kept saying, but they change clothes. Go fast. How did she not see the genius? I wanted to do monologues from Greater Tuna in acting class. I can see you like subtlety and nuance, she said. How about a David Mamet monologue? She encouraged me to reach further and dream bigger. But I wondered how she couldn't see the genius in Bertha Buemiller and Petey Fisk and the citizens of Tuna, Texas. Finally, Josie relented, and she set out to prove to me that the techniques that she taught in building relationships and finding the stakes would work, even in Greater Tuna. She workshopped my hilarious Petey Fisk monologue until it was bloody. It felt like weeks before she would let me move on to something else. What was Petey's childhood like? What did Petey eat for breakfast? Did Petey come from a broken home? Who gave a shit? And then one day in the hallway, she said, I just want you to dig a little deeper. That's all. And then she went on and she said, I actually have really high hopes for you. And everything changed that day. I'm like, what? You know, she did? Me? It was a simple comment, and it was just an aside to a student in the hallway one day. A student who felt a bit out of place in this place. But everything shifted. Josie thought I had potential. Ironically, after graduating, Jenny Odell was slated to direct Todd Berry and me in a production of Greater Tuna here in this space in Big Red during the summer, and I believe all funds were supposed to go to recarpet in red, new red carpeting. And for some reason, I can't even remember why, but it ended up that Jenny couldn't direct, and Josie was in town that summer. And so Josie stepped in and directed me and Todd in a production, the worst production of Greater Tuna that has ever been seen. In fact, if Anne-Marie Hall is here today, I seem to recall her in particular gushing about how wretched that show was in a grocery store one time or something. Here she is, yes. So today I can honestly say that I have finally had my fill of tuna. After graduating, I would house sit for Josie during the summer and sometimes when she was on sabbatical. And there was about 3 years where I really didn't have a home. I alternated between Gloria's house, Susan Kritzberg's house, and Josie's house for 3 solid years. And sometimes Josie would come back into town, and she'd say, oh, you don't need to find another place to stay, just stay here. And she would cook healthy things for me, sweet potato stew, and things with 5 ingredients or less. That was her rule. And we would watch horrible television together. She just enjoyed junk television. And then she would make me go for walks in the car. But throughout the years, I got to perform in 5 shows that Josie directed. But in my final semester here, before leaving to spend a semester abroad in London, Josie cast me as the lead, and I hadn't ever done a lead role before. She cast me as a lead in a new play called Flood Watch, which was written by her dear friend, New York playwright Jan Buttram, who was in residence here while we rehearsed. Nearly 20 years later, I posted a YouTube video that went a little viral, and suddenly I was being contacted by distant relatives and people I went to high school with saying, are you on the internet? And are you wearing a dress? Are you like an old lady who's like bitching about fall panties? And so, by chance, Jan Buttram saw that video in New York City. We reconnected, and she brought me and my drag and pony show to New York City in 2010 for a summer run at her Abingdon Theater. And so that's the way Josie worked in many of our lives, you know, connecting people, bringing people together that she thought, for whatever reasons, should know each other, even though we might not know until many years later why that happened, you know, or whatever. You're going to New York? Oh, wait, you should meet Steve and Tom, you know? Josie was the switchboard through which many of the people in this room connected. And I think if we work hard enough, we can keep up that legacy of connection to one another. Jan Buttram would have been here today, but she is in New Zealand. And so she asked me to read this. So this is Jan. The legend of Josie Helming preceded her. Second mother to Taylor Brooks, Tim Myers, and Kenny Bonifons, Josie shepherded three of my best pals through their formative years, college, and their startup years at Missouri's infamous Aero Rock Theater. I pitched in with these young men in New Orleans and New York City. They introduced me to Josie. Our chance encounters grew into friendship when I began writing plays, somewhere around 1985, and our friendship evolved into a mentorship. Josie was a cheerleader for new playwrights. If an actor had the slightest inkling toward writing plays, Josie believed, go for it. The depth of her theatrical knowledge and experience gave her a platform to guide me through many scripts. What do your characters want? What action and or choice are they willing to make to get it? What are the obstacles to getting what they want? She took a chance on this ever-emerging playwright in 1993 and fully staged an early script of mine called Floodwatch on Memphis State University's main stage. It was a sad and funny play about the AIDS epidemic. Josie funneled what seemed like a small fortune from her university budget to me, brought me down from New York, housed me in her comfy front bedroom, cooked for me, gave me access to rehearsals and talented actors. This invaluable learning experience gave me a concept of who Jan Buttram would evolve into, a playwright, actress, and a theater producer of new American plays. She gave us all confidence. Confidence is a valued commodity in any career, but it's the big must-have in theater. I was lucky to have her direct 2 of my plays, and she read and commented on them all. Watching Josie direct was a pleasure. She strolled across the stage, never hurried, but thoughtfully, leisurely, relishing every second of her journey. Patient, kind, and gentle, she could tease, cajole, and explore the irony of the moment. She wasn't mean, nor did she complain. I beefed plenty over the years, and she would defend my position to the end. I was right. She never cautioned me to tamp down my expectations, nor suggest that I throw in my theatrical towel. If I failed on paper, I always succeeded in her eyes. She introduced me to you, her beloved Memphis community. Our conversations covered plays she was directing, who her actors and designers were, and most important, what fun it was. Josie loved talking theater. Our Saturday morning chats were truly talkabouts. She shared her talented students, Steve, Jerry, Stephen, Tom, Mary. So many of you continue to inspire me. My day job is artistic director of Abingdon Theater Company. One of my all-time producing triumphs was in bringing Sister Malleus's Bible Camp to New York City. What fun. I invited Josie to teach a Chekhov workshop for the Abingdon Posse. Her sessions were loving, erudite, and inspiring. The initially skeptic, know-it-all prose in New York City became putty in her hands. Not only was she generous and affectionate to me, but to my immediate family. Josie introduced me to the amazing Kathy Sawyer, who later agreed to marry my talented and handsome brother Joe. She gave my niece and nephew a place to crash when they were sorting out their paths. On the downside, she snored. She told me she snored. We slept in the same room several times, and if I were there, I would recreate her snore. Steve, if you can give me something like a snore here. No, I won't. Finally, I bought earplugs, but it was worth every sleepless night just to be near her. I've always been a greedy kid. I love getting presents. Josie sent me Christmas presents, birthday presents, this made me think of you presents. Even in my cramped apartment, I couldn't part with a one. She gave me her hand-me-down blue jean jacket, tight on her, loose on me. I wear it every spring. She gave me books, music, and was a loyal supporter of Abingdon Theater Company. So generous. My condolences to Orion and Jeff and to all of you here. Josie and I spoke about a month before she went on. She knew she was protected. And I was so touched and grateful for the loving care surrounding her. Thank you, Judy, Tiffany, and her incredible team of caregivers. You are her greatest reward. In honor of Josie, I vow to continue to walk in her loving theatrical footprints, squeezing every bit of juice from this crazy patchwork quilt of life. I'm grateful I knew her and that she loved me. May good health, full houses, and dynamite reviews come to you and yours in loving memory.
Okay, so during challenging times, some people go out for beer and toilet paper. And then some of us, chicken soup for the Irish. A little friend said to me this morning, if you squeeze your guts in really, 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 really hard, then you might not cry. I said, are you sure? And they said, pretty sure. Okay. But I'm not making any promises. The irrepressible soul always shines through. That's a quote I read last week. And this room is alit, is it not? It is aglow. There are so many stories. It's overwhelming. There are too many stories, so I'm just going to share one. I'm going to share the first one. When I was 4 years old, we lived in Florida, and Daddy was in graduate school, and we didn't have any money, and so we would often take a drive to the ocean and spend the entire day. I remember at once being mesmerized by the sea, and at the same time very afraid of it. I wasn't so sure that I wanted to get too close to anything so vast and seemingly unknowable. At the same time, I couldn't look away. I wanted so much to go into the waves and feel them break right through me, but I didn't dare. And then one day, while in the care of a certain babysitter, who carefully put me atop her shoulders, way, way, way up and gently grasping my ankles while I held on dearly, strode lengthily into that pounding surf, reassuring me all the while until we reached that perfect spot where we could ride the waves, but also get right back to shore if needed. You know, that safe place. We looked out into the horizon, gently bobbed up and down, laughing at the diving pelicans who took their coolness oh so seriously. We tasted the salt from our chins and, see, she said, everything is okay. She taught me not to be afraid of things that are too big to understand. She taught me to take risks, and in the doing so, everything would open up and I would see clearly and maybe even get to ride some waves. She taught me to trust. And for the rest of my life, time and time and time again, I was lifted up onto those sturdy shoulders of hers and carried to that safe place where we both looked out into the unknowable and at the wonder of it all, and it was okay. So, as we stand in this warm and shining light of hers, I raise my glass. Her wings of love never lost a feather, and her pillow of dreams was often visited by the gods. Joanna Parker Helming.
Silent with emotions, but the fire at the very end should overtake us all. We're going to be yelling fire in a theater, so just... Ready? Yes. One dark night when we were all in bed. I don't know the rest. Mrs. O'Leary left the lantern in the shed. When the cow kicked it over, she winked her eye and said there'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Fire, fire, fire! One dark night when we were all in bed. Mrs. O'Leary left the lantern in the shed, and when the cow kicked it over, she winked her eye and said there'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Fire, fire, fire! Mrs. O'Leary left the lantern in the shed, and when the cow kicked it over, she winked her eye and said there'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Fire, fire, fire!
And so now we're just going to take the party backstage. You're welcome to this is our party where we mingle and talk about our stories, our memories of Josie. We will be having a toast to your program. It mentions that Ren will be doing our toast today. Ren, unfortunately, this morning is not here. I would like to add, I know it's from the call.
You're gonna have to project, darling.
Oh, I got the call board. There are people who would might like to have a say today, and the toast is a time for you to do that. And so please join us backstage.
So I was
And then Josie, as she always did, took over and said, well, what else could you say? And most of us here probably have at one time or another gotten a Christmas card or a birthday card or those wonderful opening night notes that she put on the call board. So I can just simply say, and you can say it with me, cheers.
Cheers and love.
Excellent. Bob. Hi, I'm Bob Hetherington. Josie Helming was the first friend I think I made in Memphis in 1997 when I came here to chair the department. She met me at the airport with John McFadden. She took me to lunch. She spent an entire week going around to various houses to make sure that I would not rent a place on the wrong block that met with her approval. We've remained very close friends through many meals and dozens of theater productions. Some of them good, some of them not so good. Some of them I thought were good and Josie didn't think was so good. So what did I know? She did not always agree with everything that I was doing in the department, and she certainly let me know when that happened. But she never judged me for what I was doing in the department, and I was always grateful for that. A couple of years after I joined the department, I realized that Josie had not been promoted to full professor. And I found this odd and overdue. And I remember speaking to her about, I think it's time that you go up for promotion. At which time I had to listen to Josie's lecture about promotion is something that you earn. It's not something you should have to apply for. If I deserve promotion, they should give it to me. Can you hear her say it? Well, if any of you know the ways of academia, you know that that's the perfect logic, not the way the world of academia works. So I started on a crusade to try to persuade Josie to go up for promotion. Eventually, I think she came around when she proposed, as I recall, that she would write half of her dossier if I would write the other half. And I'll tell you something, I've always had this suspicion that she made the same deal with Gloria Baxter and didn't tell you. So eventually, Josie was able to get the recognition that she deserved. And I want to make sure that I'm not leaving you with the impression that Josie was looking to get out of doing any work for this, because that was never part of her personality. I really think what she couldn't brace herself for was tooting her own horn, which was what she was called upon to do in order to justify this promotion. She often shrugged off compliments from all of us, or the praise that others would try to lavish on her. And I suppose her phrase that I think so many of us have adopted as our own, I would like you to come see the little skit that I'm working on, is another way of deflecting that sort of self-effacing point of view that was part of Josie. You know what I mean? So what I hope is that in order to get into the stage door of some heavenly production, that she is in a rehearsal room right now with Michael Jeter and John Dye and Keith Kennedy and Larry Riley and a bunch of other friends and talented actors who got there before she did. And they're all putting on a little skit together that none of her friends had to write the dossier for her to get early hits. I think the afterlife should operate on Josie Helming's principle that if they want to admit me, they should just do it. I'm a theater historian, and last night as I was sitting in my library, which is surrounded by trinkets and souvenirs and gifts that Josie has given me over the years, trying to think about what this sense of occasion was, I found a book on my shelf that had something I had never read, and I just want to share a paragraph of it with you. This is a eulogy on the death of Anton Chekhov, and it was delivered by one of his closest friends, a Russian writer I do not know, by the name of Alexander Kuprin. So this is what was spoken after the death of Anton Chekhov by one of his friends. A child's sorrows are very sharp, but will melt in sleep and disappear in the morning sun. We, who are grown-up people, do not feel them so passionately or acutely, but we remember them longly, and we grieve more deeply. After Chekhov's funeral, coming back from the service in the cemetery, it was only then that one realizes for the first time all the shattering feeling of loneliness. It seems as if one would gladly give up the rest of your life, gladly, without any tortures, for a single day with that bright, beautiful life that will never repeat itself. It seems as if one would snatch each kind, caressing word and enclose it forever in one's memory, as if one would drink into one's soul, slowly and greedily, drop by drop, each caress, each arched eyebrow. And one is cruelly tormented by the thought that through carelessness, through being in a hurry, perhaps because to us time seems inexhaustible, one has not made the most of every hour and moment that flashed by in vain. And at the same time, we know that those feelings are shared by others who were near, who loved him truly as a man of incomparable spiritual fineness, beauty, and humor. And with eternal gratitude, they will respect his memory as the memory of one most remarkable person. To the love, to the tender and subtle sorrow of these close friends, I dedicate these lines to Josie.
To Josie. So the floor is now open for brief toasts.
I have a brief toast. Josie and I arrived here in 1965, same year. When I returned a few years later, maybe a year or two after that, Josie was on the faculty. And I've known Josie for a long time. Never once did Josie ever give me any stage direction or offer any words of wisdom, and we were really not terribly close, as many of you are. But I love Josie, and Josie was a dear friend. And though she never ever instructed me in any way, she did ask me one question. And it was a pretty good question. I think you were there that night. And we were getting into a car, and we were very close. We were jamming in. And she just looked over at me, and she said, "Are you one?" I still don't know the answer. But I sure do appreciate the thought and the inquisitiveness.
Cheers.
Well, I'm going to finish my scotch anyway.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to end it.
On the Facebook page that everybody has been so kind to contribute to, I don't remember who it was, I think it may have been Ashley, but somebody put that, well, I myself put I wanted to call Josie and talk to her about the fact that I'd lost Josie. Right? So somebody else put that the scary thing to think about is that it is our turn now.
Yeah.
That it is up to us. So I would like to say a toast to all of you, as well as to Josie, and a wish that we might continue on in her very fine tradition. Amen.
Cheers.
Gonna have some music?
Well, my toast to Josie is a very short refrain inspired by the drinking songs of Josie's beloved Clancy brothers. I will sing it thrice, each time a little faster, funnier, and louder than the time before, hopefully louder because you'll have gotten the hang of it and you'll have joined in. In the words of dear Josie, say your words aloud and don't fall off the stage. Take a breath and drop your shoulders. You are enough. Peace and love to our dear darling Josie. Cheers to our dear darling Josie. A little faster. Say your words loud and don't fall off the stage. Take a breath and drop your shoulders. You are enough. Peace and love to our dear darling Josie. Cheers to our dear darling Josie. Ready? Faster. Say your words loud and don't fall off the stage. Take a breath and drop your shoulders. You are enough. Peace and love to our dear darling Josie. Cheers to our dear darling Josie.
Amen.
Yeah.
Here, here. Well done.
To Josie. All right, and as Tiffany said, Josie said, what did she want when she passed from the world? She wanted us all to gather and have a party. So let's do it. Woo!